Hello, you're welcome to our first Instagram live from No Pondivi from MPDV. I am Ivy J. Clem, and it's such an honor to be here this afternoon to speak to you about something that is very, very close to our hearts at NPDV. And as you know, today is the World Mental Health Day, and we're going to be talking a little bit with one of our very esteemed guests on the topic, the crucial link between mental health and career success. At NPDV, we're very big on people and their careers, and we hope that our guest is going to shed a bit of light on the crucial link between mental health and career success. Now, one of the things about a career is that it entails a progression, generally from when you start your career to mid to senior level and on to executive level. And for each and every one of these aspects of growth in your career, it takes a lot of mental strain and it takes a lot of mental work. So it is always best to have someone to guide you and to have policies within the organization that takes into consideration the mental well-being and the mental health of their staff. Well, let me introduce our guest. So he is Mr. Japo Ukweku. I hope I called that name correctly. He is the Director of Media and Communications for the Mental Health for Youth Initiative, MHYI. He is known as the Raven, and I did say I was going to ask why he's called the Raven. He is an accomplished marketing and brand strategist with extensive expertise in integrated marketing communication, business development, event curation, and advertising. If you would like to find out a little bit more about his expertise, please look him up on Instagram, jaco.theraven, on LinkedIn at Jaco Ukweku, on Facebook at Jaco Ukweku, and on Twitter at Jaco_the_Raven. I hope I got everything correctly.
Exactly. Like I can't even believe you're talking about me.
So thank you for joining us. Today is World Mental Health Day, and we've been having conversations over the past few days on the importance of linking it to career success. And we've had a bit of background talk about this, and we thought that it would be very important to do an Instagram Live. So thank you again for joining us at NPDV for this Instagram Live. But just to ask the first question, so how do you think that mental health really influences one's career?
Like, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Just want to say well done for all the work being done here. Amazing. Happy mental health. Like I was saying earlier before we got on, it's just so nice to see conversations involved and how there are more people open to have it, which I feel like it's definitely the step in the right direction. So to answer your question, like, first of all, you just have to think about what the meaning of mental health is. Mental health is just about like our sociological, about like our mindsets, how we feel emotionally, and when you think about that, like this kind of affects every aspect of our lives, right? Not just in terms of the workplace or our careers, just generally our well-being. So when you think about it that way, fundamentally, for us to live life in any wholesome way, it's important for us to be mindful of our mental health. And even in terms of our ability to socialize, network, and even our ability to do our jobs or grow in any career, like it's very important for you to be mindful of your mental health. Same way physically you're unfit, if you struggle, the same way you struggle if you're mentally unwell. And also because why it's tricky is a lot of these things happen behind the scene. Unlike the physical health where the manifestations you can feel it physically, but like with mental health is deeper. So the question, to answer the question, definitely like there's a link between your mental well-being and your ability to chase whatever career it is.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, it's absolutely important to talk about mental health. But, some people say that Nigeria is a really, really hot, pressured environment for for career people. I mean, people that have lived in maybe very, very hugely dense areas, say Lagos, say Port Harcourt, say they don't even have time to talk about mental health in terms of their career and their work. Is that the case, or do you think that they should look at it and say, maybe I could be getting better results if I looked at this aspect rather than just chasing after life?
Um, like when you put it that way, like in a Nigerian context, it's easy to get distracted with all the hard thing going on. Um, but then on the flip side, your ability to deal with this changing environment and how sometimes it's also from you as or with or you sometimes it's important for you to control because sometimes part of what is important is for us to, regardless of how, the thing about it, it doesn't have to be anything too complex. Just changing something can help be more physically active, also like your eating habits and the way you socialize. So I think part of what the issue sometimes is we think that the conversations around mental health and your well-being have to be complex ones. Sometimes like the simple steps that just simple how you see yourself, how you communicate, how you engage with people, all those little steps can help. And so for me is you have to think about it from a point of preventing the breakdown as opposed to treating yourself when you've broken down. So I feel like it's more about having more activities or more routines that help with your mental stability. So if it's important to you, you will definitely go after it. And I think part of the issue as well is an awareness thing. Some people don't even understand generally mental health. They don't even understand their mindset. So part of what is important, I feel like that's why one of the reasons we're sitting here is because there's a need to sensitize people to this thing. So I feel like regardless of how busy you are, like you only have one life, so you have to take time out for yourself and take times to cater to your mental health,
Yeah,
regardless of how
absolutely.
busy you
And
are.
we're going to invite people to send in their comments. And if they have questions for you as well, please, the people that are watching, you can send in your questions, and we will try to ask. We will ask Jaco as many as we can within the period of the time that we do have. So the question is, I mean, this is the most, I mean, we've talked about mental health, and you said that sometimes people generally try to generalize it into stress or whatever it is. So could we just have a working definition of what mental health is? Because I also know that in Nigeria we do have our own stereotypes, isn't it?
So mental health is, in my opinion, I feel when you think about your mental health, you have to think about your emotional well-being, your psychological well-being, your social well-being, and generally how your mind works and how you go about dealing with stress, dealing with your various activities. So the same way you think about your physical health in terms of your body is the same way you think about your mental health in terms of your mind. And so with your mental health, for me, it's just about like psychological well-being, emotional well-being. And then when you realize when you pay attention to these things, you tend to feel better about yourself in general. You tend to feel lighter, you tend to feel more in control. Um, and when there's an imbalance in some capacity, it can throw you off a lot of things. It can throw you off your ability to just even interact with your family and loved ones, or your sometimes you might not even want to wake up. So your mental health generally is just your emotional, sociological, and psychological well-being, and how you maintain it and how it affects your daily life. It's part of your life, to be honest. It's very, very important that you are
I
mindful of
agree.
it.
So these three aspects that you've mentioned, the emotional, the psychological, all of this well-being, how do you balance that when you're trying to get ahead in your career?
Um, how do you balance that? First of all, you have to be aware that you exist in these capacities, right? A lot of what we find is people only see themselves in either a physical sense or a spiritual sense. and there's somewhere in between where your mind comes in. And it's so crazy how like there's some researches that show that like most of the people that like 9 in 10 people that come to the hospital, a lot of the things they deal with can be traced in some capacity to mental health or their mind. So the thing is, your mental health is very, very important. And when it's important to you, you would pay attention to it. So, and when you pay attention to it, generally the quality of your life, it's not. So sometimes it's not exactly what it is that you're dealing with that is the problem. It's your mindset to deal and how you deal with it. Um, for career-driven people, one of the things that is very important is resilience. Your ability to keep on going even when things don't work out. Your ability to keep on trying. And what kind of helps you in that kind of capacity is your mindset, right? Um, how you're able to view these things. So I feel like generally we have to be more mindful. For me, like one of the things is mindfulness. You have to be mindful of how you feel. You have like when so I'll give you for instance now, when you feel tensed, right? The certain way that your body starts to feel, like maybe your stomach tightens or shortness of breath and stuff like that. When you feel this kind of symptoms, what you need to do is to pay attention to it and look for what the stressors are, right? So when as a career person is the only way you're able to go in, especially like environments where there's a lot of competition, you have to be very mentally stable. You have to be very mentally aware. And you also have to be open to the conversation of it. Because I think some of the issues that we have is a lack of openness, like because of societal values and the fact that, for instance, for men in the Nigerian context, right, you're almost told to suck up and be a man, regardless of what it is that you feel. And as much as I can get why in the past that seemed important, right? However, the flip side is you have a lot of people moving around so much suppressed emotions, right? And what is going to happen? There's going to be a point where they would explode, right? They would explode, and before you know, it would affect everything that they're doing. So my approach generally to mental health and wellness is prevention. Find ways to take care of yourself, the way you take care of your body, you take care of your mind, um, what you consume as well, the kind of information you read. And you have to be able
Mm.
to say, not today. If you don't feel like it, you have to be very honest with yourself because in pushing your mind, like there's only so much you can push it. You have to treat it with care and love. The same way you have to love yourself, I feel. There's a lot of that in the way you approach mental health. When you love yourself more deeply, you cater for yourself, not just in your physical sense and not just in your spiritual or religious sense, but especially in your mind, because it's kind of the link between
Yeah,
both aspects.
very insightful. Absolutely, very insightful. Thank you for that. So, the question I want to ask is, I mean, you've spoken a lot about how the individual is responsible for their mental health and to do the balance in their own life and also in their careers. But I just want to know, do the organizations themselves, do they have a part to play in ensuring that their staff, the people that want a career in their organizations, are doing well mentally, physically? Do they have a responsibility to ensure that their staff are stable in this manner as well?
Oh, yes, for sure. They definitely do have a role to play because when you think about it, if you work in a 9 to 5 environment, the bulk of your life revolves around work. You spend 5 days a week going to the office. Most of your daily activities revolve around the office. Even your close friends start to come from the office as well. So there's definitely a big role because of the amount of time you spend in the office. So one of the things that is very important for organization is the concept of organizational culture, right? Do they have the culture of the same way you have? So part of also just to add to this as well, it's like earlier in the year, the mental health bill was passed. So we have a mental health act. And part of one of the things that does, it forces us to think about mental health when we're thinking about like HMOs. So when we're looking at creating opportunities for staff welfare, we're not just thinking about their physical health. We're also thinking about their mental well-being, right? So part of what the thing is and that's why the role that people like you are, me and you are playing is very important, because we are we are going to be the drivers to push these organizations to shift their culture in a way that they cater to their staff's well-being, not just physically but mentally as well. So there's no way, if you spend that much amount of time in the office, that your organization shouldn't be responsible. And it's not responsible. I won't say responsible is the word, but they need to be mindful, because the truth about it is when your staff strength and the people in your office, right, it affects productivity, right? So in as much as they might think it's cheaper to have a staff force that is responsible. Also, as well as also what is the culture within the environment, right? A lot of times in the Nigerian workforce, there's a bit of it's a bit toxic. It's toxic because a lot of the conversation doesn't directly revolve around your work, right? There are people paying more attention to, oh, do I like this person, or where's this person from? So in that capacity, it's also the responsibility of the organization to rid itself of those kind of thought processes. It has no place in the workplace. There's no way we should be having, and in the Western world, you see things where they tell people not to get involved with spiritual or religious conversations in the workplace because of the divisive nature that it can be, because people have different views on stuff like that. So you want to create a culture where those topics can be left for your home and for your personal life, right? And I also feel there's also a need for the focus should be more professional, right? As an individual, when you know that you feel safe in your professional space, there's a way that you address your work, there's a way that your productivity increases as well. So definitely there's a big role that organizations have to play in ensuring like the mental well-being of their staff.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. Organizations should try to mainstream the fact that people should talk about their mental health alongside, their career goals. So I just wanted to paint.
I just wanted to add I wanted to add something as well is, so you when you think about things like office retreats, and that is part of the concept why a lot of organizations do things like retreats, also do things like team bonding, because there's a sense of belongingness that members of staff want to feel, and yeah, it makes them do more, right? Also, I see someone is talking about like the dignity of labor as well, right? Obviously, in this part of the world, labor isn't particularly appreciated as well, right? So part of what it is like a lot of people go to work feeling unappreciated. They feel like the value for their time is not being respected. And when you think about it, sometimes it's not even about the money, right? It's just a simple gesture, or you remember someone's birthday, you send them a card, or you like simple things like that. Because part of what it is, as social animals, we rely in some capacity subconsciously from validation from the places we spend most time in. Like, so if your office validates you by saying happy birthday, oh, they're thinking about you. And that would also affect your willingness to go over and beyond for the organization. So obviously, it's very important for organizations to be mindful about staff welfare, not just giving them perks that enriches their body, but also things that can benefit their mind. Some organizations go as far as recommending books, trainings, and different activities, which is very important as well. Some encourage breaks in the office. Depends on your structure, but I feel like it's something that you have to be deliberate about it. You have to think about the organization you work in, and the industry that you work in, and what are the practices that are obtainable, and then you tailor a welfare package
I
that suits that.
absolutely agree with you. Like you mentioned, one of the key things is that the organizational culture should embed, good mental health practices and policies to help people in the organization feel appreciated, to have dignity, and to be able to do their jobs more effectively. So at this point, I want to thank each and every one for joining. I can see so many people. I'm so sorry. The prints are really small, so I cannot see everyone that has joined, but I just want to thank each and every one of you. I'm sure I'm going to get one or two questions to be able to ask Jacko before the end of this particular interview. So please keep your questions coming, and we shall ask as we have the time to. So the question I want to ask now, I mean, we've talked about the individual in terms of their responsibility to their well-being and mental health. We've talked about the responsibility of the organization. So I want to look a little bit at asking about externals. In Nigeria, I keep on mentioning Nigeria because Nigeria is such a dynamic country, and we can go on and on about Nigeria. I mean, for this whole conversation, but I do know that in most countries, therapy, being able to talk to a mental health practitioner, getting resources from outside to be able to aid your, to your mental health journey, to be resources, apps, all kinds of things. People have almost mainstreamed it into society, that people are taking conscious effort to make sure that their mental health is properly attended to. I'm not sure of the statistics for Nigeria, but I do think we're lagging behind perhaps to Western countries. What is the place for therapy? Should we normalize therapy, people talking to other people about what's going on in their minds?
Oh, I'm definitely a big fan of therapy. And part of why I, I became very passionate in this space is as a young person going through school, I struggled with a lot of self-identity crisis. I wasn't really sure about who I was, what I wanted to do in school. I picked a course just because my parents said it was the right thing to do, and different things like that. And I realized like a lot of issues I was dealing with, all I needed to do was just have one conversation could have changed my life, right? But because I was unaware and because I wasn't sensitized, I struggled. So definitely, I feel like therapy is definitely something that we should focus on. Um, but the thing now is we live in a society where we cannot underestimate the role of social cultural context, right? Um, just like I said earlier, prior to the start of this year, what we had in terms of mental health policy was something we had the Lunacy Act. The Lunacy Act was from 1958, right? The Lunacy Act, one of the things about it is it was very shame driven, right? It would shame because automatically, if you had any conversation around mental health, you were seen as a lunatic. You're seen as a crazy person, right? So your family would hide you, and what was really interesting as well, you had no say in your treatment, right? Based on what the Lunacy Act stated, you could be picked up and you could be kept against your will, right? There was also conversation around the stigmatization in terms of housing. You could be denied housing because of your mental health state, right? Also, healthcare. So, what I feel like now, we're in a situation where this new Mental Health Act has helped us shed some more lights. Now we have a voice and we have a policy document and an act that can help drive a lot of the conversations. So now I feel like what we do need more is more communication around this, right? More content around it, sensitizing the general public to the fact that like it's okay to have issues with your mental health. We're not ashamed when we have a headache. We're not ashamed when we have stomach pains, right? It's the same concept with our mental health, right? And I feel like this new act, this new bill, is definitely gonna help with that. But then that's just one just the beginning of this conversation. Part of what it is, so I work with a community called Nigerian Mental Health, and Nigerian Mental Health is focused on coming and bringing like stakeholders and different partners in this fight to push mental wellness in general. And we realize it's not a one-man show. It's not a one organization show. We need collaboration and we need more policies as well. Because also another thing that's pretty interesting in Nigeria, if you try to commit suicide, you have to succeed because if you don't, you'll be arrested, right? And that is actually really crazy. And I feel like instead of us focusing on the prevention, right, we're trying to deter people with scare tactics, right? And that is going to have an adverse effect. We're going to have more, for lack of a better phrase, more prolific suicide attempts because now they're saying like sometimes suicide attempts is a call, is a cry for help. You need help. You feel lost, and you're hoping that someone will come and save you. It's not like you don't really want to kill yourself because who isn't afraid to die because you don't know what's going to happen next. But then you've gotten to a place where, regardless of how you feel about what's going to happen next, you feel that that is better than where you are right now. And that itself is a sad place to be. So instead of us addressing the issues around the suicide itself, why don't we think about how do we prevent it? Like, what are the checks and balances? And for me, one of the things I preach the most is empathy, mindfulness. Um, you'll notice that sometimes, like, you have a friend, usually very bubbly, usually very happy, but all of a sudden, like, their mood changes, and you're just like, ah, fun. But then they might do something. You hear a lot of conversations around kids being molested and stuff like that. And those people talk to them later in their lives, you realize that like there was something that happened and they tried to cry for help, but no one listened, right? Because we just over. So I feel like it's very important, and it starts from the home. It starts from how comfortable you feel at home. Because if you don't feel comfortable at home, that's supposed to be your safe space, and then you're going to look for um, other outlets to express yourself, and then some people go into drugs and different things. So I feel like it's important that like the home and the family take some more responsibility in terms of
Yeah,
general
thank you very much.
mental
So a
wellness.
few questions have come in, and I'm sure that my team will bring in the questions for me so that I can ask them specifically, at least one. But while we do that, I understand you're the Director of Media and Communications for the Mental Health for Youth Initiative, and you've spoken very glowingly, or you've spoken a lot about how we need to talk about it from the family before we even go into the wider society, before you even start a career. So I'm just curious, what are you telling the youth in your organization before they even embark on the journey to careers, and the kind of mindset that they need to have to be able to fortify their mental health?
So one of for us is like I feel like it's important for us to catch them young because research shows that like a lot of mental health issues are developed before the ages of 14. So you you want to be very mindful about this and like having this conversation. So what is the conversation? It's not a one conversation style thing. It's a different. First of all, it's like you want to educate them on general wellness, right? And honing on mindset, with zoning on their mental health. And for us, we realize one of the issues with the young folks is an inability to express themselves. So part of what we teach them as well is we teach them that apart from your school, apart from those different activities, look for sports and different things that you can help to clear your mind as well. One of the things that I'm very particular about is a concept called the gratitude journal. And the gratitude journal is something that like I feel like it helps with mindset shift. And what it is like at the end of the day, right? We advise these kids to think about the things that's happened during the day that they are grateful for. Write it down, right? And in some capacity, kind of affects the way they wake up, right? So what we tend to preach is not a one-time solution. It's habits, mindsets, routines that would shape you better. So generally, and we tend to make it not a one-time conversation. We follow up meetings with them. So when we go see them, we follow up on their progress. We follow up on all the activities that we've taught them, how that's working, and how that's helping them as well. So for us, like the kids are the future. Like a lot of us, when we talk about our lives, we have a way of tracing it back to
Absolutely.
something that happened to us when we're kids, and it sticks. And it starts to, yeah, even when we're grown up, some of us have gotten married, have kids, have grandkids, we're still dealing with something that an emotion that we didn't process when we're kids. So what we try to do is to catch them on mental health, no matter on do some humor, because obviously, because of the sensitivity of mental health conversations, there's a need for us to be more tactful in terms of how we have this conversation, especially with kids, in a way that is more engaging and fun, because fun is a big factor for kids as well. So we try to teach them you can have healthy fun and learn and engage as
Absolutely.
well.
So, like I promised, we have at least one question from one of our guests. So, here's a question for you. So, could you please give a few tips, one or two, on how to care for one's mental health?
Okay. So for me personally, what I feel like is very important is you have to think about your mindset. Your mindset is kind of where it all begins. That's what shapes how you. So for me, I'm very particular about the kind of thoughts that I accept about myself or what people tell me about myself. So one of the first things Be mindful of the stories you tell yourself, the stories you accept about yourself, right? Because in some ways it kind of shapes the way you see the world. Also, I would also say it's very good to be physically active. When you're mobile, like your mental health declines with less mobility, right? When you don't move well enough. So and people underestimate the importance of just taking a walk, right? Just going on a walk, getting some fresh air. I would also advise to be very responsible with the use of social media, right? I say this because I work in communication, and when you work in communication, like you do as well, you realize a lot of the communication from brands and all these people are tailored to create an impression, tailored to sell something, tailored to win you over. It's not real life, right? So whatever you see on social media should
Yeah.
not form the yardstick for how you judge your life or judge your success. So I would definitely say very mindful of what you
So,
social media, very mindful of, and also I
so I'm guessing the two major is you should be mindful of mindset and stay away from social media as much as possible, hopefully. Yeah.
as much as possible, as much as possible. And low is not real life. That's what it is. Just engage it
So,
as is. Because I see a lot of times
no,
where,
please go
pardon?
ahead. Sorry.
No, no, I see a lot of times where, and you see this especially in the section of like different posts, and you see how people would fight and go crazy for things that like it's scripted. It's make believe, right? So it's important for, I feel there needs to be more sensitization in that capacity, especially with how social media has grown over time. Like I think as a people, we've not had time to actually check out some checks and balances and put some
Yeah.
procedures in place to protect, especially the young folks as well. So I feel like social media is a big part of why we feel like more mental stress as opposed to um, previous generations because of we're exposed
Mm,
to too much. And the comparison game is a killer. Like when you're pitching yourself against other people, it's a killer because, especially since we're in the conversation of careers, is your career path is not necessarily the same with someone else, right? So you can learn or pick some things from what they're doing, but you cannot completely mirror someone else's path. And when you try to do that, right, it's almost like, for instance, you're an orange and you're trying to judge yourself by the standards of an apple. You're always going to
absolutely.
feel like
I
you're not
totally agree
doing
with you. So we're going to take one more because we did want we wanted the interview not to be too long, so that we can have opportunities to call you again some other time to talk about other topics and to also talk more about mental. So we're here talking about today's World Mental Health Day, and we have our great guest with us. So the question I have is, one of the viewers is asking is, can you kindly draw the line between stress and mental health? Are they the same thing? What?
so like to be honest is like anything that affects your mental balance, the way you feel about yourself internally, it's all under the bracket of like your mental health, right? So stress is one of the things that can affect your mental health, right? So it's the mental health is the bracket. It's like the umbrella, so to speak, of things that affect your mind. Um, in terms of, I think to take it a bit further is like maybe the question is like, so how do you deal with stress, right? You have to find different outlets. Some of the things that I personally do is I know breathing exercises help a lot. When you feel stressed, you feel overwhelmed because a lot of times stress comes from feeling overwhelmed. So part of the things that you can do, I would advise, is proper planning, especially when it comes to your career, right? Proper planning, scheduling. Because before, one of the things that really used to stress me out is, oh, I have so much to do, right? And everything is just moving around. But then I realized when I itemize the things that I have to do, they don't seem as daunting as opposed to when they're just all over the place. So I think planning and scheduling helps with stress. And also, a lot of stress comes from not knowing as well, because so education is a very big factor in terms of in whatever line of work that you're in. Try to be abreast, try to be aware, because the more aware you are, the more comfortable you get, because stress comes from moving pieces. So when you're in a situation where you don't know what to do, like that is one of the feelings that you feel. So I feel like it's important to educate yourself. It's important to um, things like breathing exercise, and sometimes it's okay to just, if you feel overwhelmed, close your computer, turn off your phone, close your notebook, whatever it
Absolutely.
is can wait. It's not the end of the world.
Absolutely. I try as much as
It's not
possible
the
to
end of the
do
world.
that, much to the chagrin of many of my friends. I'm like, the phone, I just, because I needed to decompress. And
No, you have to take
absolutely,
responsibility for
I
it. You have to take responsibility. No one else is going to come and save your mental health. Obviously, you can help external help, right? But there's a responsibility that you have to take and say, I want to do what is best for my mental health. Or maybe everyone wants to party. I'm not in the mood. And what we don't realize is forcing ourselves in that capacity can bring some form of resentment. Because you don't just resent the people that forced you out, you start to resent yourself for not having the will to say no when you know that's what you should have done. So I say just save yourself the hassle and just say, you know what, this isn't for me. Maybe another time. And yeah, if the other time doesn't come, so be
absolutely, I
it.
totally agree with you on each and every single point that you have raised in the interview. Again, we are celebrating or we're marking the World Mental Health Day. And our topic has been the crucial link between mental health and career success. And we've had the great guest to talk on these aspects. We're rounding off now because we want our audience and the people who have participated. Thank you for all your questions and thank you for your comments and thank you for joining us. And it's been such a pleasure having each and every one of you. I'm going to allow Mr. Jacko to say one or two final words on this particular auspicious day of World Mental Health Day. I'm sure that you have a specific sentence or word that you want or theme you want to leave with the people who are watching. So if we can have you do that, we'll do that, then we'll round off.
Okay, so thank you so much again for having me. Very appreciative of this conversation. I feel like it's been long overdue. I'm happy that we're getting, as a people, we're getting more comfortable with this conversation. But for me, I feel like what is important is empathy. Part of what it is when you realize when one of the greatest issues we face in this part of the world is the stigmatization associated with mental illnesses or mental disorder or any conversation around mental health. So, and one of the ways that that can be checked is by empathy, right? Trying to see things from people's perspective, not judging before you have the full picture. Also, mindfulness as well. Part of what is happening is like just be very mindful about the changes in approaches or changes in mood of people around you, because a lot of times, especially for like things like suicide, when people start to think back, they was like, oh my god, I noticed that he was like this, I noticed that. And sometimes like when you see that, if you can't speak to the person directly, reach out to someone that they might listen to as well, but never really ignore it. And even with yourself, be very mindful of how you feel in general about things, and just to be honest, we're social beings, so our relationships are a big factor. Be more mindful of the relationships. Go to places where you feel welcomed. Engage in activities that you enjoy genuinely, not just for the sake of it. And just one more thing I want to say as well, is with the Nigerian mental health, one of our focus now is suicide prevention and a campaign called Suicide No Crime. Suicide No Crime NG. If you want to get some more information, there's a petition on our website. Um, our website is www.nigerianmentalhealth.org. On there's a petition that like so many people have signed, calling for the decriminalization of attempted suicide. And just I'm actually really grateful and happy that we can have this conversation. I really believe that going forward would have a more mentally healthy populace, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm sure with more
Absolutely.
conversation like this, there's so much more that we could do. So I want to say thank you so much for having me, and yeah,
Thank you so
I guess
much,
that's all I
Mr.
have to
I
say.
did ask, why are you called the Raven? I was going
Okay, why am I called the Raven? Uh, so, so my business is called Raven Strategic Communications. It's spelled RAYVN. RAY because my dad's name is Ray, so that's the little twist there. But then in terms of the meaning of it is in the back in the day, the Raven Bird was a communication tool. It was used to send messages from one place to another. I like to see myself in some capacity as a messenger of positive energy, positive, anything positive. Those are the kind of conversations I like to have. So the Raven just kind of came from, and then also for the Game of Thrones fans, I'm a big fan of the Three-Eyed Raven. Um, that's also, and I like a good story. So all these different things just kind of helped put the name the Raven together. But then yes, I think now I feel more comfortable with the name. Initially, I felt like I had no right to be called that, but and since I started the mental health work and being able to be part of this conversation, I see the impact. So yeah, the Raven is just a messenger of
Well,
positive
thank you. So
energy,
that was
I would
quite
say.
insightful. Thank you very much for that. I just want to thank everyone who has watched this live for joining in this session. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for everyone who joined from the beginning and has stayed on even when we had all the little glitches. But that was eventually sorted, which is why we extended the timing of the live for just a little bit. And thank you also, Jaco, for your patience while we're sorting out all of the glitches. We thank you so much for your time and for your attention. So for further insights and updates, you've heard a few of the resources that Mr. Jaco has mentioned during the course of the live interview. If you want more information, you can just get in touch with us at NPDV Services and we can ask those questions or we can send you to the appropriate places to ask those questions. So my name is Ivy J. Clem. I'm going to also plug my own Instagram handle, which is IvyClem1. I always say I'm the one and only. There's no other IvyClem1 on Instagram or any other. And I'm here representing NPDV Services Limited. And just before I go, I'm also going to speak just to say again that we're so grateful to our guest for joining us. He is Director of Media and Communications for the Mental Health for Youth Initiative, and he is known as the Raven. He has explained why. He is an accomplished marketing and brand strategist with extensive expertise in integrated marketing communications, business development, event curation, and advertising. If you want to know a little bit more about him, please check him out at jackbo.theraven. The Raven is RAYVEN. Also, Jacko Ukweku on LinkedIn, Facebook, Jacko Ukweku, and on Twitter, Jacko_the Raven. Like I mentioned before, the Raven is RAYVEN, not RAVEN. So thank you so much for joining us on this live. We're marking International World Mental Health Day, and we've talked about the crucial link between mental health and your career success. We're going to have so many other Instagram lives. Give us a thumbs up, give us a like, and maybe we'll have one again next week. So thank you so much. I'm Ivy. It's been such a pleasure being on this live. Have a great, great evening. Bye. Bye, Jaco.